The thunder rolled across the vast Wyoming sky as Cassandra Owens clutched her sodden shawl tighter around her trembling shoulders. The year was 1878, and she had nothing left but the clothes on her back and her father's gold pocket watch tucked safely in her boot. Her entire life had gone up in flames not 3 days prior. The ranch house she'd called home for 23 years, now nothing more than charred timber and bitter memories. Rain pelted her face as she stumbled through the muddy street of Riverstone, a frontier town that had sprung up alongside the railroad. Her auburn hair hung in wet ropes down her back, and her once fine blue dress was caked with mud up to the knees. Cassandra had ridden through the night on her mare until the poor beast had collapsed from exhaustion just outside of town. She'd walked the remaining distance, her legs nearly giving out with each step. The saloon ahead promised shelter, if not respectability. Cassandra hesitated at the swinging doors, knowing full well that a decent woman would sooner die than enter such an establishment alone. But the cold rain and the memory of the men pursuing her made the decision simple enough. The piano music hit her first, a jaunty tune that seemed out of place with her desperation. The smell of whiskey, tobacco, and unwashed bodies followed. Conversation stuttered to a halt as she stepped inside, water pooling beneath her boots on the rough wooden floor. A dozen pairs of eyes tracked her movement, some curious, some predatory. "Well now," drawled the barkeep, a portly man with a mustache that seemed to consume half his face. "What can I do for you, miss?" Her eyes darted around the room, searching for anyone who might help her. In the corner, partially obscured by shadows, sat a man with his hat pulled low. Unlike the others, he hadn't turned to stare. Something about his stillness made her move toward him, instinct drawing her like a moth to flame. He wore a long duster, mud-splattered but of good quality. A revolver rested at his hip, and his boots were those of a man who spent more time in a saddle than on the ground. When she reached his table, he finally looked up, and Cassandra found herself staring into eyes the color of storm clouds. "Sir," she began, her voice barely audible above the resumed piano music. He said nothing, merely watched her with those penetrating eyes. He couldn't have been more than 30, with a strong jawline shadowed by several days' growth of beard. A small scar bisected his left eyebrow. Cassandra swallowed hard, summoning what little courage remained. "I need," her voice broke, and she steadied herself against the table. "My voice trembled when she asked for help," she whispered. The cowboy's expression remained unreadable for a long moment. Then, in a voice like gravel, he said, "You already got it." He kicked out the chair opposite him with one boot. "Sit down before you fall down, miss." Cassandra sank into the offered chair, relief washing over her like a wave. "Thank you," she managed, though the words felt wholly inadequate. "Vincent Drake," he said, pouring amber liquid from his bottle into an empty glass and sliding it toward her. "Drink. You look half frozen." "Cassandra Owens," she replied, accepting the whiskey with shaking hands. The liquor burned a path down her throat, but the warmth that followed was worth the momentary discomfort. "I'm being pursued." Vincent's gaze sharpened. "By who?" "Men who work for Harold Montgomery." She broke off, memories threatening to overwhelm her. "He burned our ranch to the ground when my father refused to sell. Pa didn't make it out." Vincent's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Montgomery, railroad man?" She nodded. "He wants our land for his expansion. Claims he has rights to it through some government deal, but Pa had the deeds. All legal and proper." She twisted her hands in her lap. "The deeds burned with everything else. And now Montgomery's men are after you to make sure there's no one left to contest his claim," Vincent concluded. "Yes," she whispered. "They'll be here by morning, I expect. I've been riding for days, but I lost my horse outside of town." Vincent took a long drink, his eyes never leaving her face. Something in his expression shifted, a decision being made. I've got a room upstairs. You'll stay there tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what's next. Why would you help me? Cassandra asked, wariness creeping back in despite her desperation. You don't know me. I know Harold Montgomery, Vincent replied, a hard edge to his voice. And that's enough. Later, in the small but clean room above the saloon, Cassandra sat on the edge of the bed while Vincent built a fire in the small stove. He had given her his spare shirt to change into once her dress dried a bit by the fire. The shirt hung to her knees, the sleeves rolled up multiple times to free her hands. You should get some sleep, Vincent said, straightening. Take the bed. I'll manage with the chair. Cassandra watched him, trying to understand this man who had offered help so readily. How do you know Montgomery? Vincent's shoulders stiffened slightly. He tried to run my family off our ranch when I was a boy. My father refused. They found him at the bottom of a ravine the next day. Accident, they called it. I'm sorry, Cassandra said softly. Did you lose the ranch? No. His voice was flat, emotionless. My mother held on until I was old enough to take over. Montgomery had moved on to other targets by then. He turned to face her. Your father was a brave man. He was stubborn, she corrected, a sad smile playing at her lips. Said no man had the right to take what another had worked for, especially not some city slicker who'd never had dirt under his fingernails. Vincent's mouth quirked up at one corner, not quite a smile, but close. Sounds like my kind of man. You remind me of him, Cassandra said without thinking, then felt heat rise to her cheeks. Vincent looked away, clearing his throat. Get some rest, Miss Owens. Tomorrow will come soon enough. As predicted, Montgomery's men arrived with the dawn. Vincent spotted them from the window, 4 riders moving slowly down the main street, checking the hitching posts outside each establishment. Time to go, he said quietly, shaking Cassandra gently awake. She blinked up at him, disoriented for a moment before memory rushed back. They're here. 4 of them, but there could be more. Vincent handed her the now dry dress. Get dressed quickly. We're leaving through the back. While Cassandra changed behind a folding screen, Vincent checked his revolver and packed his few belongings. By the time she emerged, he had their exit planned. My horse is in the livery stable, he explained. We'll need to get there without being seen. And then what? Cassandra asked, fastening the last button on her dress. Then we ride, Vincent replied simply. I know a place where they won't find us easily. They slipped out through the back stairs, Vincent leading the way with his hand never far from his gun. The morning mist provided some cover as they made their way toward the livery stable, keeping to the shadows between buildings. They were nearly there when a shout went up from behind them. There she is, a gruff voice called out. With a man. Vincent swore under his breath. Run, he commanded, grabbing Cassandra's hand. They sprinted the remaining distance to the stable, bullets kicking up dirt at their heels. Vincent shoved Cassandra through the door ahead of him, spinning to fire 2 shots that sent their pursuers diving for cover. Inside, the stable boy cowered in a corner, eyes wide with terror. My horse, Vincent barked. The black stallion. Now! The boy scrambled to comply, leading out a magnificent black horse already saddled and ready. I need another, Vincent said, tossing the boy a gold coin. Fastest you've got. Ain't got nothing else ready, sir, the boy stammered. Take you 10 minutes to saddle up another. We don't have 10 minutes, Cassandra said, glancing nervously at the door. Vincent made a quick decision. Then we ride double. He lifted Cassandra onto his horse before swinging up behind her. With a sharp kick, They burst from the stable, Vincent's arms secure around Cassandra's waist as he guided the horse with his other hand. Shots rang out behind them, but they were already racing down the street, the powerful stallion carrying them toward the edge of town. Cassandra clung to the saddle horn, her heart pounding in rhythm with the horse's hooves. "Hold on tight," Vincent called, urging the horse to an even faster pace as they cleared the last buildings and headed for the open country beyond. They rode hard for hours, Vincent pushing his horse as much as he dared with the double burden. By midday, they had left the flat plains behind and entered more rugged country, rolling hills dotted with pine forests and cut through with narrow creeks. When the horse began to show signs of fatigue, Vincent finally allowed them to stop in a sheltered hollow beside a small stream. He helped Cassandra down, her legs nearly buckling after the long ride. "They'll be following our trail," he said, leading the horse to drink. "But we've got a good lead, and once we get into the mountains, it'll be harder for them to track us." "Where are we going?" Cassandra asked, splashing cold water on her face from the stream. "I have a cabin," Vincent replied. "Used to be a trapper's place. It's remote 3 days' ride from here if we push hard." Cassandra sank down onto a fallen log, sudden exhaustion washing over her. "Mr. Drake." "Vincent. Vincent," she amended. "I can't ask you to risk your life like this. Those men, they're killers." He knelt by the stream, filling his canteen. "You didn't ask. I offered." "But why?" she pressed. "Surely you have your own life, your own concerns." Vincent was silent for a long moment, his back to her as he secured the canteen. "Some wrongs need to be righted," he finally said. "And some men need to be stopped. This is about more than what happened to your father, isn't it?" Cassandra asked quietly. He turned to face her, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. "Montgomery has been buying up land all across the territory, by fair means or foul. Mostly foul. Your ranch wasn't the first he's burned, but it could be the last." "What do you mean?" "I've been gathering evidence," Vincent explained. "Testimonies from people he's forced out, documents showing fraudulent land deals. I've got a friend in the territorial capital who's a federal marshal. With enough evidence, we can bring Montgomery down legally." Hope, fragile and tentative, blossomed in Cassandra's chest. "And my testimony would help?" "It would be the final piece," Vincent confirmed. "But first, we need to get you somewhere safe." They rested only briefly before continuing their journey. Vincent was a skilled rider, finding paths through the wilderness that seemed invisible to Cassandra's eyes. As the day wore on, the terrain grew increasingly difficult, with steep slopes and dense forest replacing the open plains. By nightfall, they had climbed high enough that Cassandra could look back and see the vast expanse they had crossed, golden in the setting sun. The air was cooler here, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. Vincent made camp in a small clearing, building a fire small enough to cook over but not large enough to be spotted from a distance. From his saddlebags he produced jerky, hardtack, and a tin of coffee. "It's not much," he apologized, "but it'll keep us going." "It's more than I expected," Cassandra said truthfully. She accepted the food gratefully, only now realizing how hungry she was. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the crackling fire and distant cry of an owl the only sounds. "Tell me about your ranch," Vincent said eventually. "The one you lost." Cassandra's throat tightened, but she found she wanted to talk about it needed to. Perhaps. "It wasn't grand," she began. 300 acres, mostly for cattle. My father built it from nothing after the war. He was wounded at Gettysburg, lost his left arm, but he never let it slow him down." "And your mother?" Vincent asked gently. "Died when I was 12. Fever." Cassandra stared into the fire, memories washing over her. "After that, it was just Pa and me. I learned to do everything a son would have done: branding, roping, even breaking horses. Vincent nodded appreciatively. That explains why you ride so well. What about you? Cassandra asked. You mentioned your mother held onto your ranch? She did. Toughest woman I've ever known. A rare smile crossed Vincent's face. She ran that place with an iron fist until her heart gave out 3 years ago. I've been running it since, though I'm often away, dealing with other matters, like gathering evidence against Montgomery, among other things. Vincent poured himself more coffee. I help people who can't help themselves. Sometimes that means guiding them to safety. Sometimes it means fighting back against the men who threaten them. You're a long way from your own ranch, Cassandra observed. I have good men managing it. Vincent leaned back against his saddle. And some fights are worth traveling for. That night, Cassandra slept wrapped in Vincent's spare blanket, her dreams troubled by flames and the echo of gunshots. She woke once to find Vincent still awake, his silhouette outlined against the dying embers, keeping watch. The next morning brought clear skies and renewed determination. They set out early, Vincent again demonstrating his knowledge of the land as he guided them through ever more rugged terrain. By midday, they were traversing narrow trails that hugged mountainsides, the drop-off steep enough to make Cassandra dizzy if she looked down too long. Not much farther to the pass, Vincent assured her during a brief rest. Once we're through it, we'll be in a valley few people know about. It's safer there. You think they're still following? Cassandra asked, scanning the trail behind them. Montgomery doesn't give up easily, Vincent replied grimly. But they won't know these mountains like I do. They reached the pass by late afternoon, a narrow gap between towering rock walls that opened suddenly onto a spectacular view. Below them lay a hidden valley, its floor carpeted with wildflowers and bisected by a winding river. In the distance, a small lake glittered in the sunlight. It's beautiful, Cassandra breathed, momentarily forgetting their peril. My secret place, Vincent said, a hint of pride in his voice. My cabin's on the far side, near the lake. They descended into the valley, the trail sometimes so steep that Cassandra had to close her eyes and trust completely in Vincent's horsemanship. By the time they reached level ground again, the sun was setting, painting the valley in shades of gold and crimson. The cabin, when they finally reached it, was small but sturdy, built of solid logs with a stone chimney. It stood in a clearing near the lakeshore, surrounded by tall pines that would help conceal smoke from its chimney. Home, Vincent said simply, dismounting and helping Cassandra down, at least for now. Inside, the cabin was rustic but comfortable, with a main room containing a fireplace, table, and chairs, and a small bedroom visible through a doorway at the back. Everything was dusty but otherwise in good order, as if Vincent made regular visits. While Vincent tended to his horse, Cassandra set about making the place habitable, sweeping the floors and laying a fire in the hearth. By the time Vincent returned, she had found a can of beans and was warming them over the newly lit fire. You didn't have to do all this, he said, looking around at the transformed space. I wanted to, Cassandra replied. It's the least I can do, considering everything you're risking for me. Vincent removed his hat and coat, hanging them on pegs by the door. Without them, he seemed somehow both more approachable and more vulnerable. For the first time, Cassandra noticed a thin silver chain around his neck, disappearing beneath his shirt. They ate their simple meal in companionable silence, the events of the past days catching up with them both. Cassandra fought to keep her eyes open, exhaustion pulling at her like a physical weight. Take the bedroom, Vincent said, noticing her struggle. I'll sleep out here. Too tired to argue, Cassandra nodded gratefully and retreated to the small bedroom. The bed was narrow but clean, with a quilted coverlet that smelled faintly of cedar. She was asleep almost before her head touched the pillow. She dreamed of fire again, of her father's voice calling her name as flames consumed their home. In the dream, she ran toward the burning house, but her feet seemed mired in mud, making each step an impossible effort. She screamed for her father, tears streaming down her face as she fought to reach him. "Cassandra! Cassandra, wake up!" She jerked awake to find Vincent bending over her, his face etched with concern. His hands gripped her shoulders gently, steadying her. "You were having a nightmare," he said, releasing her when he saw she was fully awake. "You called out for your father." Cassandra pushed herself upright, embarrassed. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you." "Don't apologize." Vincent sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "After what you've been through, nightmares are to be expected." "I keep seeing it," she admitted, drawing her knees up to her chest. "The fire. Pa told me to run while he went back for the deeds. He said he'd be right behind me." She swallowed hard. "He never came out." Vincent's face softened with understanding. "The first few months after my father died, I dreamed of finding him in that ravine every night. My mother would sit with me until I could sleep again." "Does it ever stop?" Cassandra asked, hating the tremor in her voice. "Not entirely," Vincent answered honestly. "But it gets easier to bear." Without thinking, Cassandra reached out and took his hand. It was rough with calluses but warm and strong. Vincent looked surprised but didn't pull away. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." Something shifted in Vincent's eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before. For a moment, Cassandra thought he might say something more, but instead, he gently squeezed her hand and then released it. "Try to get some more rest," he said, standing. "We're safe here, at least for now." The next few days settled into an unexpectedly peaceful routine. While they waited for the right time to travel to the territorial capital, Vincent showed Cassandra the hidden valley, teaching her its secrets, where the best fishing spots were, which berries were safe to eat, how to move silently through the forest. Cassandra found herself drawn more and more to this quiet, intense man. Unlike most men she had known, Vincent never treated her as weaker or less capable because she was a woman. When she expressed interest in learning to shoot his rifle, he taught her patiently, his hands steady as he showed her how to hold and aim the weapon. "You're a natural," he commented after she hit her target, a pinecone balanced on a distant stump on her third try. "I've shot before," Cassandra admitted. "Pa taught me with a shotgun, but never a rifle like this." "Your father was a wise man," Vincent said. "Every person should know how to defend themselves." "Is that what you're doing with your evidence against Montgomery?" Cassandra asked. "Defending yourself?" Vincent considered her question seriously. "Not just myself. Everyone who has land that Montgomery wants. Everyone who has suffered because of his greed." "You could have just tended your own ranch," Cassandra pointed out. "Stayed safe." "Some men can do that," Vincent replied, his gaze distant. "I tried. But every time I heard about another family driven off their land, another suspicious fire or accident." He shook his head. "I couldn't look the other way anymore." That evening, as they sat by the fire after their meal, Vincent disappeared into the bedroom and returned with a wooden box. He placed it on the table between them and opened it carefully. Inside were stacks of papers, letters, affidavits, land deeds with signatures that didn't match their owners. "This is what I've gathered so far," he explained, spreading some of the documents out. 17 families driven off their land in the past 3 years. 3 deaths ruled as accidents that were anything but. Land records altered after the fact. Cassandra leaned forward, examining the papers. "And my testimony would help?" "Yours would be the most recent," Vincent confirmed, "and one of the most damning." Montgomery has been careful to maintain a respectable front, a businessman simply expanding his interests. But burning out homesteaders? That's harder to explain away. When do we leave for the capital? 2 more days, Vincent decided. By then, Montgomery's men will have either given up the search in this area or spread out too thin to be effective. We'll slip through their net and make straight for Fort Laramie. My friend Marshal Curtis will meet us there. Cassandra nodded, sudden determination filling her. I'll be ready. That night, unable to sleep despite her comfortable bed, Cassandra stepped outside to clear her head. The night was cool but not cold, the sky a vast canvas of stars above the valley. She walked to the edge of the lake, watching moonlight ripple across its surface. She sensed rather than heard Vincent approach, his footsteps nearly silent on the soft ground. Couldn't sleep? He asked, stopping beside her. Too much on my mind, she admitted. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, shoulders almost but not quite touching, both gazing out across the water. What will you do? Vincent finally asked. After Montgomery is brought to justice? Cassandra had been asking herself the same question. I don't know, she confessed. The ranch is gone. I have some money saved in the bank in Cheyenne, but not enough to start over. You could, Vincent began, then hesitated. You could stay. On my ranch, there's plenty of work for someone with your skills. Cassandra turned to look at him, surprised. His face was half in shadow, but she could see the earnestness in his expression. As what? She asked softly. A hired hand. Vincent met her gaze directly. As whatever you want to be. Something warm unfurled in Cassandra's chest, a feeling she hadn't expected to experience again after all she had lost. Hope, yes, but something more. Something that had been growing since that moment in the saloon when a stranger had said, "You already got it." Vincent, she began, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. Whatever it might have been was lost as Vincent suddenly tensed, his head turning sharply toward the forest edge. Get down, he hissed, pulling her to a crouch beside him. What is it? Cassandra whispered, her heart suddenly racing. Movement in the trees, Vincent replied, his voice barely audible. Could be deer, but... His caution was justified a moment later when a twig snapped unnaturally, followed by a man's muffled curse. The cabin, Vincent whispered urgently. We need to get back. My guns are there. They crept along the lakeshore, staying low and using the shadows for cover. They had nearly reached the cabin when a voice called out from the darkness. That's far enough, Drake. A figure stepped into the clearing, rifle aimed squarely at them. Cassandra recognized him immediately. Silas Turner, Montgomery's chief enforcer. Behind him, 2 more men emerged from the trees. Well, Turner drawled, a cruel smile playing at his lips. 2 birds with 1 stone. Mr. Montgomery will be pleased. Vincent had pushed Cassandra slightly behind him, his body tense as a drawn bowstring. How did you find us? He demanded. You think you're the only one who knows about this valley? Turner laughed. Old Man Whitaker was happy to point us in the right direction once we explained our interest. Cassandra felt sick. Whitaker was the storekeeper in the last town before they'd entered the mountains. He had seemed friendly when they'd stopped to buy supplies. What do you want, Turner? Vincent asked, though the answer was obvious. You know exactly what we want, Turner replied. The woman, for starters. Mr. Montgomery doesn't like loose ends. And you've been a thorn in his side for too long. If you think I'm going to let you take her, you're even stupider than you look, Vincent said, his voice deadly calm. Turner's smile vanished. Always the hero, aren't you, Drake? Just like your father. And look how that ended for him. Vincent's shoulders tensed further, and Cassandra could almost feel the rage emanating from him. She touched his arm lightly, a silent warning not to let Turner goad him. "The way I see it," Turner continued, "you've got two choices. You can die here, or you can die back in Riverstone where Mr. Montgomery can watch. Either way, the woman comes with us." "There's a third option," Vincent replied. "You leave now, and I don't put a bullet in each of you." Turner laughed. "Big talk for an unarmed man." "Who said I'm unarmed?" In one fluid motion, Vincent drew a small derringer from his boot, a hideaway gun Cassandra hadn't known he carried. The sudden movement startled Turner, and in that split second of confusion, Vincent fired. The shot caught Turner in the shoulder, spinning him around with the impact. Vincent shoved Cassandra toward the cabin. "Run!" Everything happened at once. The other two men opened fire as Vincent and Cassandra sprinted for the cabin. Bullets thudded into the ground around them and splintered wood from the cabin's exterior. They burst through the door, Vincent slamming it behind them and immediately moving to grab his revolver and rifle from beside the fireplace. "Stay low," he commanded, handing Cassandra the revolver. "Use this if they get inside." Cassandra nodded grimly, checking that the gun was loaded. Outside, she could hear Turner shouting orders to his men, his voice tight with pain and fury. Vincent took up position by one of the windows, rifle at the ready. "They'll try to flush us out," he predicted. "Maybe set fire to the cabin." The irony wasn't lost on Cassandra. Fire had started this nightmare. It seemed fitting that fire might end it. "What do we do?" "We hold out as long as we can," Vincent replied, "and hope for an opportunity to turn the tables." That opportunity came sooner than expected. As one of Turner's men approached the cabin with a flaming brand, Vincent took careful aim and fired. The man dropped with a cry, the torch falling harmlessly to the damp ground where it sputtered out. "One down," Vincent said grimly. The night dissolved into a tense standoff, with occasional bursts of gunfire punctuating the darkness. Vincent moved from window to window, never staying in one place long enough to present an easy target. Cassandra kept watch on the back of the cabin, the revolver steady in her hands despite her fear. As dawn approached, an eerie silence fell. No movement, no gunfire, just the soft sounds of the forest awakening around them. "They might have retreated," Cassandra suggested hopefully. "Or they're waiting for us to think that," Vincent countered, peering cautiously out the window. "Wait here." Before Cassandra could protest, Vincent slipped out the back door, moving low and fast. She held her breath, counting the seconds until his return. 1 minute stretched into 5, then 10. Just as she was about to go looking for him, the front door swung open. Vincent stood there, blood streaming from a cut above his eye but otherwise intact. "Turner's dead," he announced. "Found him by the lake. Bled out from the shoulder wound, looks like. The other ones gone took their horses and lit out." Relief flooded through Cassandra, so intense she felt light-headed. "It's over, then?" "Not quite," Vincent corrected, closing the door and coming to her side. "One got away. He'll report back to Montgomery. We need to move fast, get to Fort Laramie before they can regroup." They packed quickly, taking only what they absolutely needed. The morning sun was just cresting the mountains as they mounted Vincent's stallion and rode out of the valley, leaving behind the peaceful refuge that had briefly been their home. The journey to Fort Laramie was tense but uneventful. They rode hard, stopping only when necessary, always watching for pursuit that never materialized. Vincent's face grew grimmer with each passing mile, his determination to see Montgomery brought to justice hardening into something like destiny. Fort Laramie itself was a bustling outpost, part military installation and part civilian settlement. Marshal Ethan Curtis met them at a small house on the outskirts, as arranged through a telegraph Vincent had sent from the last town they passed. Curtis was a barrel-chested man with a silver-streaked beard and eyes that missed nothing. He listened intently as Cassandra recounted the burning of her ranch and her father's death, making notes in a small book and occasionally asking for clarification. When she finished, he nodded gravely. This matches the pattern we've seen. Together with the evidence Vincent has gathered, we have enough to arrest Montgomery and bring him before a federal judge. When? Vincent asked, his impatience evident. Tomorrow, Curtis replied. I've already sent for additional marshals. We'll ride for Cheyenne at first light. That night, Cassandra and Vincent stayed in a small room above the local hotel. The first real bed either had slept in since the saloon in Riverstone. Despite her exhaustion, Cassandra found sleep elusive, her mind racing with thoughts of the coming confrontation. Vincent sat by the window, keeping watch more from habit than necessity. You should rest, Cassandra told him. Tomorrow will be a long day. I will, he promised, though he made no move to lie down. Cassandra studied him in the dim light, this man who had risked everything for her for justice. Why did you really help me, Vincent? The truth. Vincent was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and raw with honesty. When I saw you walk into that saloon in Riverstone, something just clicked. You were so afraid, but there was steel in you too. Reminded me of my mother. He smiled faintly. And then when you mentioned Montgomery, it felt like fate. Like everything I'd been working toward had led me to that moment to you. To us, Cassandra corrected softly. Vincent looked at her then, really looked at her, and the emotion in his eyes took her breath away. Yes, he agreed. To us. He crossed to the bed and sat beside her, taking her hand in his. When this is over, he began. I meant what I said back at the cabin. You could come back with me. To my ranch. As what? Cassandra asked again, needing to hear him say it. Vincent reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. As my wife, if you'd be willing. Joy, pure and unexpected, rushed through Cassandra. After all the loss and fear, to find something so precious seemed like a miracle. I would be more than willing, she whispered. He kissed her then, a tender meeting of lips that held the promise of a shared future. Cassandra leaned into him, her arms sliding around his neck as the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more needful. Later, lying in the circle of Vincent's arms, Cassandra felt peace settle over her for the first time since her ranch had burned. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight at least was theirs. The confrontation with Harold Montgomery played out the following day with a swiftness that was almost anticlimactic. Marshal Curtis, accompanied by 4 additional lawmen, Vincent and Cassandra, rode into Cheyenne shortly after noon. They found Montgomery at his opulent office, secure in his belief that his power in the territory was absolute. The shock on his face when Curtis produced a federal warrant for his arrest was something Cassandra knew she would remember for the rest of her life. Montgomery, a corpulent man with small, pig-like eyes, blustered and threatened. But in the end, he was led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. It will take time for the case to come to trial, Curtis explained afterward. But with the evidence we have, conviction is all but certain. Montgomery will spend the rest of his life in prison. And his land holdings? Vincent asked. Will be thoroughly investigated, Curtis assured them. Those obtained fraudulently will be returned to their rightful owners where possible, or opened for legitimate settlement. Cassandra thought of her own ranch, now nothing but ashes and painful memories. Some things can't be restored, she said quietly. Vincent's arm slipped around her waist. No, he agreed, but we can build something new. They were married 2 days later in a small ceremony at Fort Laramie's chapel. Cassandra wore a simple blue dress purchased in Cheyenne, and Vincent wore the only suit he owned, somewhat travel-worn but freshly pressed. Marshal Curtis stood as witness, along with a few of the fort's inhabitants who had been charmed by their story. As they exchanged vows, Cassandra felt her father's presence, approving and proud. The gold watch that had been her only remaining possession from her previous life was tucked safely in the pocket of her dress, a tangible connection to the man who had taught her strength and courage. After the ceremony, Vincent surprised her with a gift, a delicate silver chain matching the one he wore. From it hung a small locket. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a tiny painting of a valley, rendered with remarkable detail despite its size. "Their valley. So you'll always have a piece of it with you," Vincent explained. "No matter where we go." Tears sprang to Cassandra's eyes as she fastened the chain around her neck. "It's perfect." They left Fort Laramie the following morning, heading north toward Vincent's ranch in Montana Territory. The journey would take weeks, but neither minded. After all they had been through, the simple pleasure of riding side by side through the vast, open country was a joy in itself. Each night, they made camp beneath the stars, their bedrolls pushed close together. Sometimes they talked long into the night, sharing stories from their past and dreams for their future. Other times, they communicated in touches and kisses, learning each other's bodies with tender exploration. One evening, as they sat by their campfire, Cassandra asked about the silver chain Vincent always wore. He hesitated, then pulled it from beneath his shirt. Hanging from it was a simple silver ring. "My mother's wedding ring," he explained. "She gave it to me before she died, told me to keep it safe until I found someone worthy to wear it." Cassandra's heart swelled with emotion. "And have you found someone worthy?" Vincent's smile was answer enough, but he spoke the words anyway. "I have." He slipped the chain over his head and carefully removed the ring. Taking Cassandra's left hand, he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "I've been carrying this for 3 years, waiting for the right moment," he said softly. "This feels like it." Cassandra looked down at the ring, simple but beautiful, just like the love that had grown between them. "Your mother would approve, I think." "She would have loved you," Vincent assured her. "Almost as much as I do." 3 weeks later, they crested a hill and Vincent reined in his horse, pointing ahead. "There it is. Home." Below them stretched a beautiful valley, not unlike the one they had left behind. A river wound through lush grassland, and in the distance, Cassandra could make out a substantial ranch house surrounded by outbuildings. Cattle dotted the hillsides, and horses grazed in a fenced pasture near the house. "It's beautiful," she breathed, taking in the scene. "It's yours now, too," Vincent reminded her. As they rode down into the valley, a man emerged from the barn, shading his eyes against the sun. When he recognized Vincent, he waved enthusiastically. "That's Theo, my foreman," Vincent explained. "He's been running things while I've been away." Theo turned out to be a weathered man in his 50s with a friendly smile and firm handshake. He welcomed Cassandra with genuine warmth, exclaiming over Vincent's good fortune in finding such a fine lady to bring home. "The men will be mighty pleased to see you finally settled down, boss," he told Vincent with a wink. "They had a betting pool going on whether you'd ever find a woman willing to put up with your wandering ways." "Those days are behind me," Vincent replied, his arm tightening around Cassandra's waist. The ranch house was larger than Cassandra had expected, built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Inside, it was comfortably furnished, if somewhat Spartan in a way that spoke of a man living alone. "It needs a woman's touch," Vincent admitted as he showed her through the rooms. "My mother had it fixed up nice, but after she passed." He shrugged. "I was away more often than not." "I'll make it a home again," Cassandra promised. already envisioning the changes she would make: curtains for the windows, flowers on the table, quilts for the beds. The bedroom was dominated by a large four-poster bed that Vincent explained had been brought overland by wagon when his parents first settled the ranch. The mattress was fresh. Theo's wife had seen to that and turned down invitingly. That night, as they lay together in that bed, Vincent's arms around her and his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, Cassandra felt a contentment she had never known before. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but it had led her here, to this man, this place, this life. "Are you happy?" Vincent murmured, his lips brushing her temple. "Completely," she assured him. "Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible." In the months that followed, they settled into their new life together. Cassandra threw herself into making the ranch house a home, while also learning the business of running a cattle operation. Vincent, true to his word, never treated her as anything less than a full partner, valuing her opinions and teaching her everything she wanted to know. Word came from Marshal Curtis that Montgomery's trial had begun, with a conviction expected by winter. His empire had indeed crumbled. His ill-gotten lands returned to their rightful owners or reallocated to settlers willing to work them honestly. As the first anniversary of their meeting approached, Vincent surprised Cassandra with news that Marshal Curtis had secured compensation for her father's ranch, not enough to rebuild, but a substantial sum that acknowledged the wrong that had been done. "What will you do with it?" Vincent asked as they sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Cassandra had given it considerable thought. "I'd like to use it to help others," she decided. "People like me who've lost everything. Maybe a fund to help them start over." Vincent nodded approvingly. "We could set it up through the bank in town. Make it official." "The Owens Memorial Fund," Cassandra suggested, thinking of her father. "Perfect." As autumn painted the valley in russet and gold, Cassandra shared her own news with Vincent, news she had suspected for several weeks, but had only recently confirmed with the doctor in town. "A baby?" Vincent repeated, his expression shifting from shock to wonder. "You're sure?" "The doctor says I'm about 3 months along," Cassandra confirmed. "We should have a child by spring." Vincent whooped with joy, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around before setting her down gently, suddenly concerned. "I didn't hurt you, did I? Or the baby?" Cassandra laughed, touched by his instant protectiveness. "We're both fine, though you might want to refrain from tossing me in the air for the next few months." That night, Vincent lay with his hands spread over Cassandra's still flat abdomen, wonder in his eyes as he contemplated the new life growing within her. "Boy or girl?" he mused. "Does it matter?" Cassandra asked. "Not a bit," Vincent assured her. "Though if it's a girl, I hope she has your spirit. And if it's a boy, I hope he has your heart," Cassandra replied, covering his hand with her own. Spring arrived early that year, the valley bursting into bloom weeks ahead of schedule, as if nature itself was eager to welcome the newest member of the Drake family. Thomas Henry Drake was born on a clear April morning, with the help of the doctor from town and 3 of the ranch wives who had become Cassandra's friends. Vincent, pacing anxiously outside the bedroom during the long hours of labor, burst into tears when the doctor finally emerged to announce he had a healthy son. When he was allowed inside, he approached the bed with reverence, gazing down at his wife and the tiny bundle in her arms. "He's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the downy black hair that already covered the baby's head hair just like his own. "Would you like to hold him?" Cassandra asked, her exhaustion forgotten in the joy of the moment. Vincent hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "What if I drop him?" "You won't," Cassandra assured him. "Just support his head, like this." Carefully, as if handling the most precious treasure in the world, Vincent took his son into his arms. The baby's eyes opened blue-gray, like storm clouds, and seemed to focus on his father's face. "Hello, Thomas," Vincent said softly. "I'm your pa." As she watched her husband cradle their child, Cassandra felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. From the ashes of tragedy, they had built this a home, a family, a future filled with promise. The journey had not been easy, but every step had led them here, to this perfect moment. "I love you," she told Vincent, her heart so full it might burst. "Both of you." Vincent looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "And we love you." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, cradling Thomas in one arm while reaching for Cassandra's hand with the other. More than words can say. In the years that followed, the Drake Ranch prospered, as did its owners. Thomas was joined by a sister 2 years later, Elizabeth Rose, named for both their mothers. The Owens Memorial Fund helped dozens of families make fresh starts, becoming a legacy that would outlive them all. Vincent never returned to his dangerous pursuit of justice, finding that being a husband and father satisfied his soul in ways that vengeance never had. He still occasionally assisted Marshall Curtis with particularly difficult cases, but always locally, never venturing far from home. Cassandra's nightmares faded with time, replaced by dreams of the future of her children growing strong and true, of the land sustaining them through generations, of the love that had begun with a trembling voice asking for help and a cowboy who had already decided to give it. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Cassandra riding to a hilltop overlooking their valley. They dismounted and spread a blanket on the grass, sharing a picnic lunch while watching their ranch below busy with the activities of a successful operation. "Any regrets?" Vincent asked, leaning back on his elbows. "About how your life turned out?" Cassandra considered the question seriously. "I miss my father," she admitted. "I wish he could have known you, known our children." She reached for Vincent's hand. "But no regrets. Not about us. Never about us." "Remember that night in Riverstone?" Vincent asked. "When you walked into that saloon? How could I forget?" Cassandra smiled. "My voice trembled when I asked for help. And I said, 'You already got it?'" Cassandra finished for him. "Best decision you ever made." Vincent pulled her close, his arms as strong and sure as they had been on that first wild ride away from danger. "Best decision we ever made," he corrected. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, casting long shadows across their valley, Cassandra Drake rested her head on her husband's shoulder and gave thanks for the life they had built together, a life born from courage, sustained by love, and rich with the promise of all the years still to come.